Now, for a closer look at the significance of that summit between President Yi and Xi, we're joined today by Professor Muhui Zhang, Associate Professor at the Department of East Asian Studies at Sungkyunkwan University. Professor Zhang, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here.
So what stood out to you the most from the summit between President Yi and Xi? And could you just tell us more about how China views the overall outcome of yesterday's meeting?
Well, from Chinese perspective, I think this is a great success, especially because it marked a new beginning, a restart for the China-Korean relations. I think there are two reasons for saying so. The first reason is that you see China is happy to see the President Lee Jae-myung's expression regarding Koreans' respect for the one China policy regarding the Taiwan issue. And also at the at the same time, I think China is happy to see that the principle of, interest-based, the pragmatism once again becoming the cornerstone of China-Korean relations. You see, in the past years, there has been certain problems between China and Korea because the previous President Yoon administration have adopted this value-based diplomacy while prioritize the United States rather than China. So for that reason, I think China is very welcome to see the China-Korean relation going back to the ordinary and healthy track.
Right, I see. And although the two leaders seem to have set aside detailed security discussions for later, South Korea did say that they both agreed on the importance of resuming talks with North Korea. Do you think China could play a more constructive role in bringing North Korea back to dialogue in 2026?
First of all, I think I have to say that this time the economic agendas and this economic issues seems to be the most important agenda and in the schedule during these times, China-Korean bilateral summit talks. But of course, I also have noticed that last night there seems to be a general consensus between the two countries' leaders that there seems to be a necessity, and they also acknowledged the importance of bringing back the two Koreas into the negotiation and the tables and to reopen the talks ASAP. But I would also suggest the caution, the not being overly optimistic on what kind of the role China can play in the future. Because anyway, I don't really see this specific schedules or timetables to be released at this time. Of course, I think China would be happy to deliver the message and do certain coordination roles between the two Koreas, but I think we'll have to wait and see with more patience to see what would happen in the future.
Right, and like you mentioned, economic issues were discussed at the summit, and hundreds of business leaders from both countries also met in Beijing, including leaders of major Korean businesses like Samsung, SK, and Hyundai. And this marked the first large-scale economic event between the two countries in 9 years. How significant is this, and how has this sort of helped strengthen the two countries' economic cooperation?
Yeah, I think this is indeed, in my eyes, the highlight or one of the biggest outcomes for this time's bilateral, summit talks. And you see, I did a simple count. There seems to be 15, cooperation documents signed by the two governments and followed with a number of MOUs signed during this China-Korean business forums. Indeed, you see, from the Chinese perspective, I think the President Xi Jinping yesterday especially emphasized the importance and the great potential for Chinese-Korean collaboration in AI, environmental, and green industries. And I hope there's the potential as well for those issues to be covered by the China-Korean Free Trade Agreement negotiation, the second phase. If that happens, I would say there will be more hard commitments and the greater potentials for the two countries to further improve their collaborations.
Right, and there was also a lot of attention on whether there would be any progress in easing Beijing's restrictions on Korean cultural content to, help Kcontent enter the Chinese market. Would you say there was any real progress on this issue during the meeting yesterday?
I think it's very likely to happen for the Chinese government to release, the so-called cultural ban or cultural restrictions, which has been lasted for many years. You see, one of the reasons for saying so, from my perspective, is that you see right now there has been this tension between China and Japan, especially. So I personally call that there seems to be an ongoing this diversion effect between China, Japan, as well as China and Korea. For example, that nowadays there are many Chinese tourists who initially made their plan to travel to Japan. But because of the current tension, they changed their plans and they prioritize to come to Korea for travel. So this is a good sign indeed. Also regarding the Korean's content industry and the Chinese cultural bans against Korea, as you mentioned, I don't think there will be a clear policy declarations that Chinese would release all of these bans. But however, in terms of the real practice, I think the Chinese government will approve and allow the Korean enterprises, Korean entertainment industries to get into the Chinese market in a more fluent, in a more smoothified way. So I'm personally optimistic in this regards.
I see. I guess we'll have to see how that goes. All right, Professor Zhang, thank you so much for your insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.